scientific feeling you have never trust. Is that the quantity is probably much less because the quantity of water is not that important in comparison with the quantity and in particular the surface area, because if we are talking about outgassing, what counts really more is the floodplain surface area, which is huge. So even if we have some groundwater coming from the bottom, we have to see the volume. We need the information on the volume of groundwater that is discharged and so on. But it's discharged mostly during the low water period. The rest of the time at high water, it is kept inside the soil, the groundwater, or the flow of water is from the river to the groundwater. And I expect it would be less than the floodplain input, much less.
I agree. Yeah. Next. Okay, mais chamou.
But again, this is for the central Amazon. If you go to the upper Amazon, there the input of groundwater from small streams might be more significant, and also because there is less floodplain.
Yeah.
If you go to first order streams with more altitude, there the groundwater input is more significant, and there are some work existing showing that. Well, there are some contradiction, but some studies show that it is very significant, and another one shows that it is not significant.
Okay. Yeah. Rafael agora.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So when what I'd like to ask, you mentioned the effect of reservoirs in your last slide, and you were talking basically about the floodplain reservoirs, and we talked about this before, and now that I saw your presentation, it was reflecting on the effects of the constructing dams in whitewater rivers, which are the main supply of nutrients to these floodplains. And then so they boost the cycle carbon in floodplains and the absorption of nutrients. Then there's the growth of vegetation, carbon goes to the water, and then so this whole picture that you showed depends on this constant and long-term supply of nutrients. So if whitewater rivers are stopped by dams, and in the 100 years, the amount of nutrients on the soil of the floodplains is replaced by nutrient-poor layers or less nutrient-rich layers, what do you think that would be the response of the carbon balance?
I think it is quite complex. It is quite complex. It is very important to ask this question, but it is very difficult to answer. Very difficult, because there are many processes acting together. So you are talking about nutrient retention in the whitewater reservoir. Yes, that's very important for the downstream floodplains. Primary production might be limited if this potentially might be limited in the floodplain if there is no more suspended matter rich in nutrient that coming to these floodplains. So this will decrease the biological pump that we describe here. The CO2 pump, the wetland CO2 pump, would be limited by this impact. And on the other hand, if you build a reservoir in an area where there was floodplain and now there is always water, then the biology will be modified as well. I mean, the response of the wetland will change if there is no more flood pulse. But in what sense? Difficult to. Generally, it would be decreased. Primary production will be decreased. We will turn to a planktonic system and not to a semi-aquatic specific system like in the natural floodplain system. So we need. I think what is important is to think about it now. And now that the impact of this reservoir is starting, we need to design the right experiments to isolate each of these processes, to go in the field and be able to quantify, for instance, the depletion nutrients versus time due to the retention of the suspended matter. How will we quantify this? How will we study it in the field? How will we design our studies in the field to be able to identify the process and to separate this process from others? And the same for the other processes. That's important. And people that are working in, like you, that are working in the Madeira River, they have, I think, very interesting work to do there, very fascinating work to do there, in particular in original experimentation.
Yeah, and whether in the Andes or on the floodplains or wherever in the Amazon, stems are of much concern for the biogeochemistry of the.
Yeah, and also, when we talk about dams, many people report gross emission. Huh?
Mm.
In the case of floodplains, or flooding the Amazon in general, I think the difference between gross and net emission will be huge. So we need to have the information on the pre-dam emissions to be able to quantify the net impact of the reservoir. Mm.
Thanks.
Yeah. De novo? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for the nice presentation. My question is also more related to your field, your gut feeling, based on your experience in the Amazon. There is very little information about carbon sequestration, carbon burial, like permanent burial in permanent lakes in the Amazon. Do you, I mean, there is, that I know, only one very good paper by Patricio on it, but then other isolated studies. Do you think this burial can be an important part of the cycle?
Yes, I think so. I think so. But we have, in fact, burial has been studied in mostly in open lakes, and in open lakes, respiration at the interface is huge, and the organic matter that is reaching these sediments, it's quite biodegradable. Macrophyte C4, Tariq will show some results on that. C4 microphytes will represent a huge biomass, and we can trace it with various tracers, in particular stable isotopes. They do not accumulate in this sediment, and phytoplankton is very biodegradable. They do not accumulate. But wood, trees, at the large scale, talking about the upper region of the Amazon. There are regions in the, for example, in the Peruvian Amazon where Patricia is working now, and also in Bolivia, or where there are regions where the morphology of the river is quite different. It is typically meanders and flooded forest. Not flooded all the time, but and in this Peruvian or Bolivian area, the movement of the meanders is so fast, and so the trees they fall because of the erosion, and they grow on the other side. They fall on one side and they grow on the other side. So if you make the assumption that the growing is compensated, or if the fall of the trees, if these trees are mineralized, then it is compensated by the new trees that are growing in the region where the sediment are depositing. But you have to make the assumption that the trees the wood is decomposed, and in fact I think we should design some kind of investigation of wood, as I said in the presentation, in this area. I think the preservation of wood in the floodplain is potentially important in the upper Amazon basin. Not in the central, it might be different, but in the upper area, which is so dynamic in terms of geomorphology, where this channel, they move at a huge velocity, incredible, the movement of this channel. So the biomass that is mobilized physically due to this erosion, deposition, etc., the biomass of carbon, wood, is potentially important, and maybe this is also a region, typically the Piedmont region of the Andes, is also a region where you have oil. So if you have oil, it was produced from primary production on land a long time ago. So there is sequestration of carbon in this area potentially important. Yes, yes.
Nice. Thank you very much.
Fechou? Ninguém é fora. Oh. Yeah, I will thank. I also thank Fabio. Portuguese, I would say parabéns for what you are doing, because this is very original and very nice. I think this is the future of education, high-level education, and I think this is really something very, very nice.